This is not just another Wednesday. This is as Wednesday, March 11, 2026, a divinely orchestrated moment in time where heaven has already gone ahead of you and prepared a strategic advantage. You did not stumble into this day by accident. You were summoned into it. And today we are activating something powerful, something precise, something unstoppable. Welcome to your Ayato my Chayard Ivianistradoai. Odismarti Virawaya Pa Saitawan. There are battles you cannot win with emotion. There are obstacles you cannot move with effort alone. There are oppositions that will not bow to noise, but they must bow to strategy. And today we are not reacting to the enemy. We are outmaneuvering him. We are stepping into divine intelligence, supernatural insight, and heaven's blueprint for victory. Some of you have been facing resistance that doesn't make sense, doors closing unexpectedly, conversations shifting suddenly, opportunities delayed without explanation. But hear me clearly, when opposition increases, it is often evidence that impact is imminent. The intensity of the resistance is proof that your next level requires a higher strategy. And today, we are calling down the wisdom of God that confounds every adversary and dismantles every hidden agenda. This is not the season to fight harder. This is the season to think higher. This is the hour to receive divine downloads, ideas that cancel sabotage, solutions that silence critics, clarity that cuts through confusion. God is not just giving you strength for the battle. He is giving you strategy for dominion. Today, we declare that every trap set against you will backfire. Every scheme designed to frustrate you will be exposed. Every whisper of opposition will be overridden by a louder decree from heaven. You will not be outnumbered. You will not be outmatched. You will not be outsmarted. Because when divine strategy is activated, opposition becomes a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. So prepare your spirit, align your mind, steady your focus. This prayer is about to unlock precision, timing, and tactical favor. You are stepping into calculated victory. You are receiving supernatural insight. You are moving with divine intelligence. There is a realm of intelligence that does not originate in boardrooms, classrooms, or strategy sessions. It flows from the throne room of heaven. When we speak of heavenly intelligence activated, we are declaring access to divine wisdom that overrides human limitation and exposes hidden opposition. This is not about being clever. It is about being connected. It is not about information. It is about revelation. When God releases his intelligence into your life, you begin to see what others cannot see, anticipate what others cannot anticipate, and move with a precision that confounds every adversary. Heavenly intelligence shifts you from reaction to revelation. Many people live reacting to circumstances, reacting to pressure, reacting to opposition. But when divine wisdom is activated, you no longer respond out of fear or frustration. You respond out of foresight. You begin to discern patterns. You recognize cycles. You identify subtle traps before they fully form. What was meant to surprise you loses its power because God has already shown you the blueprint behind the battle. Human limitation says, I don't have enough resources. Divine intelligence says, you have what you need. You simply need strategy. Human limitation says, this is too complex. Divine intelligence says, nothing is hidden from me. When heaven's wisdom is released, confusion gives way to clarity. The fog lifts, the noise quiets. What once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable because insight has entered the equation. There are oppositions that operate in secrecy. Not every battle announces itself. Some agendas are subtle, some attacks are strategic, but heavenly intelligence exposes what is concealed. It illuminates motives. It reveals inconsistencies. It brings hidden dynamics into the light. You begin to sense when something is misaligned. You discern when a door should not be opened. You recognize when an opportunity is not authentic. This is not suspicion. This is discernment sharpened by divine insight. When divine wisdom overrides human limitation, you stop leaning exclusively on experience. Experience is valuable, but revelation is superior. Experience tells you what happened before. Revelation tells you what is about to happen. Experience equips you for the familiar. Revelation prepares you for the unprecedented. In this season, you need more than what you have learned. You need what heaven is revealing in real time. Heavenly intelligence changes how you interpret adversity. Instead of seeing opposition as a sign of defeat, you recognize it as confirmation of destiny. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is heaven teaching me through this? Instead of asking, who is against me? You ask, what strategy is required for this level? Your perspective shifts from victim to visionary. Divine wisdom also brings timing into alignment. Many failures are not the result of wrong decisions, but wrong timing. Heavenly intelligence instructs you when to move and when to wait. It teaches you the power of restraint. It shows you when silence is more strategic than speech. It reveals when preparation is more important than promotion. Timing becomes a weapon in your hand because you are no longer driven by pressure, you are directed by purpose. When heaven's intelligence is activated, you become solution-oriented. While others magnify the problem, you begin to articulate the pathway forward. Ideas flow, creativity increases. You see angles that others overlook. You identify leverage points that shift entire situations. Divine intelligence empowers you to think beyond the obvious and operate beyond the predictable. It also fortifies your confidence. When you know that your insight is sourced from God, intimidation loses its grip. You are not easily swayed by opinions. You are not paralyzed by criticism. You move with assurance because your strategy is not self-generated, it is heaven-inspired. Confidence rooted in revelation cannot be shaken by resistance. Heavenly intelligence cultivates discipline. When God reveals a strategy, it requires obedience to execute it. Revelation without discipline produces frustration. But when you align your actions with divine instruction, momentum builds. Each step reinforces the next. Each decision compounds your advantage. What once seemed impossible becomes inevitable because you are operating according to a higher blueprint. This intelligence also refines your associations. Divine wisdom helps you discern who is assigned to your journey and who is a distraction. It sharpens your awareness of influence. You recognize when conversations drain your clarity and when they enhance your vision. You become intentional about your environment because you understand that strategy thrives in the right atmosphere, when heavenly intelligence overrides human limitation. It disrupts patterns of doubt. Doubt often arises from incomplete information, but when God reveals what is hidden, uncertainty diminishes. You begin to walk with a steadiness that is not dependent on visible evidence. You trust the insight even before the outcome manifests. Faith becomes strategic rather than sentimental. Hidden opposition cannot withstand exposed truth. When divine wisdom uncovers a scheme, it simultaneously neutralizes its power. Darkness thrives in secrecy, but it weakens under illumination. As heavenly intelligence increases in your life, covert resistance loses its advantage. Plans designed to undermine you are dismantled before they fully mature. Divine intelligence also stretches your capacity. As God entrusts you with greater insight, He expands your responsibility. Strategy requires stewardship. The more you see, the more accountable you become. This is not a burden, it is an elevation. You are being prepared to handle influence with integrity and authority with wisdom. Heavenly intelligence transforms how you pray. Your prayers become targeted. Instead of general requests, you issue precise declarations. You address specific areas. You call out hidden agendas. You dismantle subtle attacks. Your language becomes strategic because your understanding has deepened. You pray from knowledge, not assumption. When divine wisdom overrides human limitation, it recalibrates your priorities. You become less impressed with appearance and more committed to substance. You invest in preparation rather than performance. You value depth over display. Strategy replaces impulse. Intentionality replaces reaction. You begin to recognize that every level requires a different mindset. The strategies that sustained you in one season may not suffice in the next. Heavenly intelligence ensures that you are not operating with outdated methods in a new environment. It upgrades your thinking. It refines your approach. It keeps you aligned with the demands of your assignment. As heavenly intelligence is activated, you step into a realm where obstacles become data points rather than deterrents. Every challenge provides information. Every resistance reveals a vulnerability in the system that can be leveraged. You no longer fear complexity because you are equipped with insight that transcends it. Divine wisdom positions you ahead of trends, ahead of opposition, ahead of crisis. You are not scrambling to catch up. You are strategically positioned to advance. Your decisions carry weight because they are informed by revelation. Your movements are calculated because they are guided by discernment. Heavenly intelligence activated means you are no longer navigating life blindly. You are operating with sight beyond sight. You are discerning what is forming beneath the surface. You are moving with an awareness that transcends natural perception. Human limitation bows to divine revelation. And hidden opposition is uncovered by the light of strategic wisdom unfolding within you in real time. There is a difference between movement and positioning. Movement is activity. Positioning is alignment. Many people are busy, but few are strategically placed. When we speak of strategic positioning for victory, we are declaring that you are divinely aligned in the right place at the right time with the right instruction. This is not coincidence. This is orchestration. God does not merely bless effort, he blesses alignment. Strategic positioning begins with surrender. Before you can be placed correctly, you must be willing to be directed. Pride resists instruction, but humility attracts divine guidance. When you yield your agenda to heaven's blueprint, you give God permission to rearrange your environment, your associations, and even your ambitions. What feels like disruption is often divine relocation. What seems like delay is frequently recalibration. Being in the right place is not just geographical, it is spiritual and mental. You can be physically present in an opportunity, yet spiritually misaligned with its purpose. Divine positioning ensures that your mindset matches your assignment. It synchronizes your inner world with your external environment. When your thoughts, beliefs, and expectations align with God's intention, doors open with less strain and greater sustainability. Timing is a critical component of victory. The right place at the wrong time can produce frustration. The right opportunity approached prematurely can result in unnecessary resistance. Strategic positioning aligns you with divine timing. It teaches you to discern seasons. It trains you to recognize when preparation is required and when execution is necessary. You stop forcing doors that are not yet designed to open and start preparing for doors that are already unlocking. Divine alignment also involves the right instruction. Information is abundant, but instruction is specific. Information can inspire, instruction directs. When you are strategically positioned, you receive clear directives for your next move. You are not operating on assumptions or guesswork. There is clarity in your decisions because they are anchored in divine insight. Each step becomes intentional rather than impulsive. Sometimes strategic positioning requires separation. Not every environment is conducive to your elevation. Some spaces are comfortable but limiting. Some relationships are familiar but restrictive. God may reposition you away from what feels secure to place you where your potential can expand. This transition can feel unsettling, but it is often the gateway to acceleration. Strategic positioning sharpens your discernment. You begin to recognize when you are out of alignment. There is an internal check, a subtle awareness that something is not synchronized with your assignment. Instead of ignoring that signal, you respond to it. You make adjustments. You recalibrate. You prioritize alignment over approval. You value obedience over popularity. When you are divinely aligned, opportunities find you. You are no longer chasing validation or scrambling for recognition. Your positioning creates visibility without self-promotion. The right people recognize your value because you are standing where you are assigned to stand. Favor flows more naturally when you are aligned with purpose. Being in the right place also means understanding your sphere of influence. Strategic positioning does not require you to dominate every space. It requires you to occupy the one assigned to you. There is a grace that accompanies divine placement. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable because you are operating within your designated territory. You stop comparing your journey to others and start maximizing your own assignment. The right time often demands courage. Alignment can position you in spaces that stretch your capacity. You may feel unqualified or underprepared, but if God has placed you there, He has equipped you for it. Strategic positioning is not about comfort, it is about calling. It is about standing in spaces that reflect your destiny, even when your confidence is still catching up. Right instruction brings precision. Vague direction produces scattered results, but specific guidance generates focused impact. When you receive divine instruction, it refines your priorities. You know what to emphasize and what to eliminate. You know when to speak and when to remain silent. You know when to invest and when to withdraw. Each decision is filtered through discernment rather than emotion. Strategic positioning also involves patience. Alignment is not always instant. There may be seasons of preparation that feel hidden and uncelebrated. In those moments, it can seem as though nothing is happening, but positioning is often occurring beneath the surface. Character is being refined. Skills are being sharpened. Perspective is being expanded. What appears dormant is actually developing. When you are positioned correctly, resistance loses some of its intimidation. You understand that opposition is often a confirmation of placement. The intensity of the challenge reflects the significance of the assignment. Instead of retreating, you stand firm because you know you are where you are supposed to be. Confidence rooted in alignment is resilient. Divine alignment brings coherence to your life. Your relationships, opportunities, and responsibilities begin to complement one another instead of compete. There is synergy in your schedule. There is harmony in your commitments. You are not fragmented or overextended because you are operating within the boundaries of your assignment. Strategic positioning for victory requires awareness of transitions. Seasons change, assignments evolve. What was once the right place may no longer serve your next level. Divine alignment is dynamic, not static. It requires sensitivity to the spirit and flexibility in your approach. You remain attentive to subtle shifts, ready to move when instructed. Right placement also amplifies impact. When you are aligned, your efforts produce greater results with less strain. There is an efficiency that accompanies obedience. You are not exerting unnecessary energy fighting against misalignment. Instead, your energy is channeled toward purposeful advancement. Strategic positioning reshapes your perspective on setbacks. What looks like rejection may actually be redirection. A closed door can be evidence that you were spared from misalignment. Disappointments can serve as divine detours, guiding you toward environments that better reflect your destiny. When you trust divine placement, you stop internalizing every closed opportunity as failure. Being divinely aligned also enhances collaboration. You encounter people whose strengths complement yours. Partnerships form that accelerate progress. Connections feel purposeful rather than accidental. You recognize divine appointments when they occur because your spirit is attuned to alignment. Strategic positioning fosters stability. Even in turbulent environments, there is an internal steadiness that comes from knowing you are placed by God. Circumstances may fluctuate, but your sense of assignment remains intact. This stability anchors your decisions and guards your focus. As you embrace divine alignment, your confidence is no longer rooted in control, but in trust. You trust that God knows where you are needed. You trust that His timing is intentional. You trust that His instruction is precise. This trust frees you from anxiety about missing opportunities because you understand that what is assigned to you cannot bypass you. Strategic positioning for victory is about more than achieving success. It is about fulfilling purpose with accuracy. It is about standing where heaven has stationed you and moving when heaven instructs you. It is about recognizing that alignment precedes acceleration and obedience precedes overflow. When you are divinely aligned in the right place, at the right time, with the right instruction, you step into a dimension where effort is empowered by grace, and your presence in that space becomes a catalyst for transformation unfolding in real time. There are moments in your life when the opposition appears organized, calculated, and intentional. It can feel as though forces are aligning against you with precision. But there is a higher strategy at work, one that releases confusion into the camp of the enemy. When divine intelligence is activated on your behalf, what was carefully constructed to resist you begins to unravel from within. Coordination collapses, communication falters, agendas clash. What seemed unified becomes divided. Confusion in the camp of the enemy is not chaos in your life, it is disruption in theirs. It is God stepping into systems designed to intimidate you and dismantling them from the inside out. It is the reversal of expectation. The very plans meant to entrap you begin to entangle those who created them. The strategies formed to block your progress begin to contradict themselves. The enemy thrives on clarity of attack. Precision gives opposition its confidence. But when God releases confusion, that precision dissolves. Instructions are misinterpreted. Alliances fracture. Timing is disrupted. What was meant to be executed seamlessly becomes disjointed. There is hesitation where there was once certainty. There is misalignment where there was once agreement. You may not see this disruption happening behind the scenes, but its effects become visible over time. Conversations shift unexpectedly. Decisions are delayed. Internal disagreements surface among those who opposed you. What once felt like a unified front begins to show cracks. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention altering the atmosphere of opposition. Confusion in the enemy's camp often manifests as self-sabotage. Those who intended to undermine you begin to undermine themselves. Their words expose their motives. Their actions contradict their intentions. Secrets surface without your effort. Hidden agendas are revealed through their own missteps. You are spared from defending yourself because truth emerges on its own. While confusion is released into the opposition, clarity is intensified in you. This is the divine exchange. As their vision blurs, yours sharpens. As their coordination falters, your focus strengthens. You begin to move with greater confidence, not because the battle has disappeared, but because the balance has shifted. The advantage is no longer in their hands. Confusion disrupts momentum. When the enemy cannot maintain consistent direction, progress stalls. Plans are revisited repeatedly. Doubts infiltrate their ranks. Second guessing replaces certainty. The energy that was once directed toward opposing you is redirected toward internal conflict. Their strength diminishes not by your force, but by their fragmentation. This divine disruption also affects perception. The narrative crafted to misrepresent you begins to lose credibility. Those who once accepted falsehoods without question begin to notice inconsistencies. Doubt arises within the opposition's own circle. Influence weakens as trust erodes. The platform built to challenge you becomes unstable. Confusion in the camp of the enemy is strategic, not random. It targets the core of their unity. It interferes with their communication. It interrupts their planning. It alters their timing. Each layer of disruption compounds the next. What was meant to be a coordinated effort becomes a collection of disconnected attempts. You may wonder why certain attacks never fully materialized, why certain threats dissolved before reaching you, why certain alliances against you did not sustain. Often, the answer lies in unseen confusion. God intervened before the plan could solidify. He introduced uncertainty where there was once agreement. He shifted perspectives within the opposition. As confusion spreads among those opposing you, fear can infiltrate their camp. When plans repeatedly fail or unravel, confidence diminishes. They begin to question their strategy. They begin to question each other. Suspicion replaces solidarity. The energy that once fueled their opposition becomes diluted by doubt. This divine confusion does not require your retaliation. It does not demand your defense. Your role is to remain aligned, focused, and obedient. While you maintain your position, God handles the disruption. While you pursue your assignment, He addresses the agenda formed against you. Your stability contrasts with their instability. Confusion in the enemy's camp also creates opportunities for exposure. Hidden motives surface unintentionally. Private conversations become public. Inconsistencies are noticed by those who were once unaware. The truth has a way of rising when confusion destabilizes deception. What was concealed becomes difficult to maintain. The psychological impact of confusion is significant. When coordination breaks down, morale declines, enthusiasm fades, initiative weakens, the drive to persist diminishes. Opposition loses its stamina. What once felt relentless becomes sporadic. What once felt intense becomes inconsistent. While they grapple with internal discord, you advance with clarity. The path that once seemed obstructed begins to open. Resistance loses its structure. Barriers lose their reinforcement. The very atmosphere shifts. What was heavy becomes lighter. What was tense becomes manageable. Confusion also interrupts timing. Even well-designed plans require synchronized execution. When timing is disrupted, effectiveness decreases. Delays introduce vulnerability. Missed opportunities weaken impact. The opposition struggles to regain momentum as their synchronization collapses. This divine strategy reveals a deeper truth. You are not fighting alone. There is intervention beyond your awareness. There is strategy unfolding beyond your sight. While you focus on obedience, heaven focuses on orchestration. While you remain steadfast, disruption is released where necessary. Confusion in the camp of the enemy does not eliminate opposition entirely, but it neutralizes its cohesion. A divided force lacks the strength of a unified one. Fragmentation reduces effectiveness. Internal conflict consumes attention. Energy that was directed outward is redirected inward. You may observe subtle signs of this disruption: unexpected withdrawals, sudden changes in tone, shifts in behavior. What once seemed aggressive becomes uncertain. What once seemed confident becomes cautious. These are indicators that confusion has entered their strategy. As confusion increases among those opposing you, your discernment must remain sharp. Do not misinterpret their instability as an invitation to complacency. Continue to move strategically. Continue to pray precisely. Continue to operate with integrity. The disruption is working on your behalf, but your alignment sustains your advantage. Confusion in the enemy's camp ultimately reinforces your confidence in divine protection. It reminds you that opposition is not absolute. It reveals that strategies formed against you are not invincible. It demonstrates that no plan is beyond disruption when God intervenes. The collapse of coordination among your adversaries becomes a testimony of divine justice. The unraveling of their agenda becomes evidence of supernatural involvement. The fragmentation of their unity becomes proof that what was meant for harm can be dismantled from within. As their camp wrestles with uncertainty, you stand anchored in clarity. As their plans contradict each other, your purpose remains consistent. As their confidence erodes, your faith intensifies. The contrast becomes unmistakable. Stability on one side, confusion on the other. In this exchange, you witness the power of divine strategy manifesting beyond visible effort. You recognize that battles are not won solely through confrontation, but through orchestration. You observe how confusion dismantles opposition more effectively than force. And as their camp continues to fracture under the weight of divine disruption, you advance with steadiness, aware that the same God who releases confusion among your adversaries is establishing clarity, focus, and unwavering resolve within you as you continue moving forward under his strategic hand at work behind the scenes. There is a level of victory that cannot be achieved through enthusiasm alone. It requires discernment. It requires precision. It requires the ability to perceive beyond appearances and act with calculated accuracy. Supernatural discernment and precision position you to make decisive, error-proof moves in moments where hesitation could cost you and impulsiveness could compromise you. This is about seeing clearly in environments designed to distract you. Discernment is the difference between what is good and what is God. Not every open door is ordained. Not every opportunity is aligned. Supernatural discernment sharpens your internal compass so that you are not swayed by pressure, flattery, or urgency. It allows you to detect subtle inconsistencies. It alerts you when something appears right but feels misaligned. This sensitivity is not fear-based. It is spirit-led. Precision follows discernment. Once you perceive accurately, you must act accurately. Precision eliminates wasted movement. It refines your decisions so that each step contributes directly to your advancement. In spiritual warfare and in daily life, unnecessary actions create vulnerability. But when you move with precision, your energy is focused, your resources are stewarded wisely, and your influence is maximized. Supernatural discernment protects you from deception. Deception rarely announces itself. It often disguises itself as convenience, urgency, or even opportunity. Discernment slows you down enough to evaluate what is presented. It examines motives. It questions timing. It considers long-term implications rather than immediate gratification. You begin to sense when something is strategically sound and when it is strategically dangerous. Precision requires discipline. Decisive, error-proof moves are rarely emotional reactions. They are informed responses. When you cultivate discernment, you learn to pause before committing. You gather insight. You pray intentionally. You seek clarity. This intentional pause is not weakness. It is wisdom in action. It prevents you from entangling yourself in unnecessary conflict or misaligned commitments. In environments of opposition, discernment becomes a defensive shield. You begin to recognize subtle shifts in tone, behavior, and atmosphere. You notice when conversations carry hidden undertones. You identify when collaboration is genuine and when it is manipulative. This awareness empowers you to respond strategically rather than emotionally. Supernatural discernment also enhances your understanding of timing. There are moments when action is required immediately and moments when restraint is more powerful. Precision teaches you to distinguish between the two. It prevents premature announcements. It guards against delayed obedience. It aligns your movements with divine timing so that each decision carries maximum impact. Error-proof moves are not about perfection. They are about alignment. When your decisions are rooted in discernment, even unexpected challenges can be navigated effectively. Precision gives you adaptability. You are not rigid, you are responsive. You adjust without losing focus. You recalibrate without losing momentum. Discernment influences your associations. You begin to identify who strengthens your vision and who subtly weakens it. Precision guides you in setting boundaries. It empowers you to limit access where necessary. Not everyone deserves proximity to your strategy. Not every voice deserves influence over your decisions. This clarity protects your assignment. Supernatural discernment sharpens your communication. You learn when to speak directly and when to communicate strategically. Precision in language prevents misunderstandings. It ensures that your words align with your objectives. You become intentional with what you reveal and what you reserve. Information becomes a tool rather than a liability. Decisiveness is a byproduct of clarity. When you see accurately, you move confidently. Indecision often stems from confusion, but discernment eliminates ambiguity. You weigh options through the lens of purpose. You evaluate risks through the lens of assignment. This process strengthens your confidence because your choices are anchored in understanding rather than assumption. Precision also affects how you allocate resources. Time, energy, finances, and influence are finite. Discernment helps you invest them wisely. You begin to recognize which initiatives yield sustainable results and which merely create the appearance of progress. Precision eliminates distractions that dilute your effectiveness. Supernatural discernment enhances your ability to anticipate consequences. Before you commit, You consider the ripple effect. You evaluate how a decision will influence not only your present circumstances, but your future trajectory. This foresight reduces regret. It positions you to act with intention rather than impulse. In moments of pressure, precision keeps you steady. Urgency can cloud judgment. Emotional intensity can distort perception. Discernment anchors you. It reminds you of your objectives. It filters out noise. Even when circumstances are chaotic, your internal clarity remains intact. Error-proof moves often require courage. Sometimes discernment will lead you in a direction that is unpopular or misunderstood. Precision may require you to decline opportunities others would accept. It may require you to confront issues others would avoid. Confidence in divine guidance strengthens your resolve to act according to conviction rather than consensus. Supernatural discernment refines your intuition. Over time, you become more attuned to subtle indicators. You recognize patterns. You sense when alignment is present and when it is absent. This awareness becomes second nature. It informs your decisions without requiring constant analysis. Precision transforms your preparation. You begin to anticipate potential obstacles and address them proactively. You strengthen weak areas before they are exposed. You fortify systems before they are tested. This proactive approach reduces vulnerability and enhances resilience. Discernment also influences your response to success. Not every advancement requires immediate expansion. Precision helps you consolidate gains before pursuing new territory. It teaches you to build sustainably rather than rapidly. Growth becomes strategic rather than reactive. When supernatural discernment governs your decisions, you are less likely to repeat mistakes. You reflect on previous experiences with insight rather than regret. You extract lessons. You adjust patterns. Precision turns experience into wisdom. Decisive, error-proof moves are often quiet. They do not require spectacle. They require certainty. You move without broadcasting every intention. You act without seeking validation. Your confidence rests in alignment rather than applause. As discernment deepens, your spiritual awareness intensifies. You become sensitive to atmospheres. You recognize when environments are conducive to progress and when they require intercession. Precision guides you in shifting atmospheres through prayer, declaration, and strategic action. Supernatural discernment and precision create a rhythm in your life. Decisions flow from clarity. Actions follow alignment. Adjustments reflect wisdom. You are not constantly correcting missteps because you are moving intentionally from the beginning. In a world filled with noise, opinions, and competing agendas, discernment becomes your advantage. Precision becomes your strength. Decisive, error-proof moves distinguish you from those who operate impulsively. Each choice contributes to your advancement. Each step reinforces your stability. You begin to navigate complexity with confidence. You approach uncertainty with insight. You handle opportunity with caution and courage. Supernatural discernment sharpens your perception, and precision refines your execution, enabling you to move strategically through every challenge, every opportunity, and every transition with calculated accuracy and unwavering focus shaped by divine guidance at work within you. Outmaneuvering every obstacle is not about brute strength. It is about strategic agility. Obstacles are inevitable, but stagnation is optional. When resistance rises, it is not a signal to retreat, it is an invitation to reposition. The obstacle is not your ending point, it is a pivot point. What stands in your way can become the very leverage that propels you forward when approached with divine strategy. Many people attempt to confront obstacles head-on without assessing their structure. They exhaust themselves pushing against barriers that require navigation rather than force. To outmaneuver is to observe, to discern, and to adapt. It is to recognize that not every wall must be broken down. Some must be climbed, others walked around, and some simply outlasted. Strategy transforms frustration into foresight. Obstacles often reveal hidden weaknesses in your systems. They expose inefficiencies. They highlight gaps in preparation. Instead of resenting the resistance, you can analyze it. What is this challenge revealing about your current methods? What adjustment is required? When you approach obstacles as information rather than intimidation, you reclaim your power. Outmaneuvering requires flexibility. Rigidity breaks under pressure, but adaptability bends and advances. When a plan encounters resistance, it does not mean the vision is flawed. It may mean the approach needs refinement. Divine wisdom enables you to adjust without abandoning your assignment. You remain committed to the objective while remaining flexible in execution. Every obstacle carries leverage within it. Leverage is the hidden advantage embedded in difficulty. A closed door can redirect you to a more aligned opportunity. A delay can provide additional preparation. A criticism can sharpen your strategy. When you view resistance through a strategic lens, you begin to identify opportunities hidden within adversity. Opposition often expects you to respond predictably. They anticipate emotional reactions. They prepare for defensive maneuvers. To outmaneuver is to disrupt expectations. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond deliberately. Instead of escalating conflict, you elevate strategy. This unexpected composure shifts the dynamic of the situation. Turning resistance into opportunity requires emotional discipline. Frustration clouds judgment, anger narrows perspective, but clarity expands options. When you remain steady under pressure, you can identify alternative pathways. You begin to see angles that were previously obscured by emotion. Calmness becomes a competitive advantage. Obstacles can also refine your focus. Distractions often disguise themselves as opportunities. Resistance filters out what lacks durability. When something withstands pressure, it proves its value. When something collapses under strain, it reveals its instability. This process sharpens your priorities. You invest energy where it produces sustainable results. Outmaneuvering does not eliminate opposition. It neutralizes its impact. You may still encounter barriers, but they no longer define your trajectory. Each challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. You ascend through what was meant to confine you. Elevation emerges from resistance. Strategic agility also involves anticipation. Instead of waiting for obstacles to appear, you prepare for them. You strengthen weak areas. You build contingency plans. You cultivate resilience before it is required. Preparation reduces the shock of resistance and increases your capacity to adapt quickly. Some obstacles are external, but others are internal. Doubt, fear, and hesitation can become barriers more restrictive than external opposition. To outmaneuver every obstacle, you must confront internal limitations with the same strategy you apply externally. Replace doubt with declaration. Replace fear with focus. Replace hesitation with intentional action. Opportunity often hides within inconvenience. A disrupted schedule may introduce a new connection. A failed attempt may reveal a superior method. When you train your mind to search for advantage within adversity, you shift from survival mode to strategic mode. You stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and begin asking, "How can this serve the vision?" Outmaneuvering requires awareness of timing. Some obstacles dissolve with patience. Others require immediate action. Discernment guides your response. Acting too quickly can intensify resistance. Acting too slowly can forfeit advantage. Strategic timing transforms obstacles into launch pads. When resistance intensifies, innovation increases. Pressure stimulates creativity. You begin exploring alternatives. You experiment with new approaches. Obstacles push you beyond comfort and into ingenuity. What once seemed impossible becomes achievable through unconventional methods. Turning opposition into opportunity also reshapes your narrative. Instead of describing yourself as blocked, you see yourself as being refined. Instead of labeling challenges as setbacks, you identify them as setups. This shift in language influences your mindset. It reinforces resilience. Obstacles can expand your network. In moments of resistance, collaboration often becomes necessary. You encounter allies you might not have met otherwise. Shared challenges build strategic partnerships. These connections become assets beyond the initial obstacle. Outmaneuvering every obstacle requires confidence in your capacity to adapt. You trust that you can learn quickly. You trust that you can adjust efficiently. This confidence reduces panic. It enhances clarity. It empowers decisive action. Resistance often reveals the seriousness of your assignment. Significant impact attracts significant opposition. Instead of being discouraged by the magnitude of the obstacle, you recognize it as confirmation of purpose. The size of the resistance reflects the value of the vision. Strategic agility also includes the ability to disengage. Not every obstacle requires confrontation. Some are distractions designed to drain your focus. Wisdom identifies which battles are necessary and which are optional. Conserving energy for strategic priorities preserves momentum. When you consistently outmaneuver obstacles, resilience becomes part of your identity. You no longer see yourself as fragile. You recognize your adaptability as strength. Each victory over resistance reinforces your confidence. Opportunity emerges when you extract lessons from adversity. Every obstacle carries insight. Each challenge refines your methods. When you apply those lessons, future resistance loses its novelty. You become proactive rather than reactive. Outmaneuvering is a mindset before it becomes a method. It begins with the belief that no obstacle is absolute. There is always another route. There is always another strategy. This belief fuels persistence. As you navigate resistance strategically, you begin to recognize patterns. Certain obstacles repeat in different forms. Recognizing these patterns allows you to prepare in advance. Familiar challenges lose their intimidation because you have already developed responses. Turning resistance into opportunity also strengthens your influence. Others observe how you handle adversity. Your composure under pressure becomes inspiring. Your adaptability becomes instructive. Leadership is often forged in moments of challenge. Obstacles test endurance. Strategic agility ensures sustainability. You pace yourself, you prioritize wisely, you maintain perspective. You do not allow temporary resistance to dictate permanent decisions. Each time you transform a barrier into a bridge, you reinforce your strategic capacity. You confirm that opposition cannot dictate your destiny. You prove that adaptability outperforms aggression. You demonstrate that vision, combined with strategy, outlasts resistance. And as you continue to move with agility, awareness, and intentionality, obstacles lose their power to intimidate and instead become instruments of elevation, shaping your resilience, sharpening your strategy, and positioning you to advance beyond limitations that once appeared immovable. Converting every resistance into refined opportunity aligned with your forward momentum and unwavering pursuit of purpose guided by divine insight at work within you. Dominion is not domination, it is disciplined authority aligned with divine intention. When we speak of dominion through divine strategy, we are declaring advancement that is not accidental, not emotional, and not temporary. It is calculated, it is intentional. It is anchored in heaven's blueprint for unstoppable breakthrough. Dominion is the result of alignment between vision and strategy, purpose and execution, revelation and responsibility. Divine strategy shifts you from survival mode to rulership mindset. Survival reacts, dominion responds. Survival asks how to endure. Dominion asks how to expand. When heaven entrusts you with strategy, it is because you are being prepared to steward influence. Authority without strategy becomes chaotic, but authority guided by divine instruction becomes transformative. Dominion begins in the mind. Before you occupy territory externally, you must govern your internal world. Thoughts must align with truth. Emotions must submit to purpose. Habits must reflect discipline. Divine strategy addresses the unseen infrastructure of your life. It strengthens character before elevating visibility. It fortifies integrity before increasing influence. Heaven's blueprint is precise. It accounts for timing, relationships, resources, and resistance. When you operate according to divine strategy, you are not improvising your future, you are executing a plan already established in eternity. This awareness changes your posture. You move with confidence because you understand that your steps are ordered with intention. Dominion requires structure. Breakthrough is not sustained by enthusiasm alone. Systems must be built. Processes must be refined. Divine strategy reveals where structure is lacking. It highlights inefficiencies. It identifies weak foundations. Rather than ignoring these vulnerabilities, you address them. You reinforce what supports your assignment. Advancement through divine strategy is deliberate. You do not rush expansion at the expense of stability. Each layer of growth is secured before the next is pursued. This measured approach creates durability. It ensures that when increase arrives, it can be sustained without collapse. Dominion also demands stewardship of influence. As your reach expands, your responsibility increases. Divine strategy teaches you how to manage growth without losing focus. It guards against distraction. It prevents overextension. It ensures that your influence serves purpose rather than ego. Heaven's blueprint often includes preparation seasons that feel hidden. In these moments, foundations are laid quietly. Skills are sharpened without applause. Discipline is cultivated without recognition. Dominion requires this hidden preparation. When breakthrough manifests, it rests upon groundwork that was established in private. Unstoppable breakthrough is not about the absence of opposition. It is about the presence of alignment. Resistance may arise, but alignment neutralizes its capacity to derail you. When your strategy is sourced from divine wisdom, opposition becomes a factor to consider, not a force to fear. Dominion through divine strategy also transforms your decision-making process. You evaluate opportunities through the lens of assignment. You prioritize initiatives that align with purpose. You decline engagements that dilute focus. Precision protects progress. Authority is strengthened by consistency. Divine strategy reinforces daily disciplines. Small, intentional actions accumulate into significant advancement. Dominion is often established through repeated obedience in seemingly minor decisions. Each aligned choice builds momentum. Breakthrough requires courage. Strategy may direct you into unfamiliar territory. Expansion often involves risk. But when risk is guided by revelation, it becomes calculated rather than reckless. You move forward with awareness rather than assumption. Divine strategy integrates spiritual insight with practical execution. Prayer informs planning, revelation shapes organization, faith inspires action. This integration ensures that your advancement is holistic. You are not spiritually inspired, but practically unprepared. You are not practically skilled, but spiritually disconnected. Dominion also requires emotional intelligence. As your influence grows, so does scrutiny. Divine strategy prepares you to navigate criticism without losing composure. It strengthens resilience. It anchors your identity beyond public opinion. Heaven's blueprint often involves collaboration. Dominion is rarely solitary. Divine strategy connects you with individuals whose strengths complement yours. Partnerships become purposeful. Collective vision amplifies impact. Unstoppable breakthrough is sustained by adaptability. Even with a clear blueprint, circumstances may shift. Divine strategy includes flexibility. You adjust methods without abandoning mission. You recalibrate tactics while preserving vision. Dominion through divine strategy requires long-term perspective. Immediate gratification is exchanged for sustainable growth. You resist shortcuts that compromise integrity. You choose endurance over impulse. Authority expands as competence increases. Divine strategy emphasizes preparation. You invest in learning. You refine skills. You strengthen weaknesses. Excellence becomes a standard rather than an aspiration. Breakthrough often disrupts comfort. New levels demand new capacities. Divine strategy prepares you for expansion by stretching your thinking. It challenges limiting beliefs. It dismantles internal ceilings. Dominion includes influence over environments. As you align with divine strategy, atmospheres shift. Your presence introduces order. Clarity replaces confusion. Stability replaces chaos. Leadership becomes evident through results. Heaven's blueprint ensures that advancement is not random. Each connection, each opportunity, each challenge fits within a larger design. This awareness reduces anxiety. You recognize patterns of progression. Unstoppable breakthrough is characterized by momentum. Divine strategy eliminates unnecessary detours. Focus intensifies. Effort is concentrated. Results compound. Dominion also involves accountability. With authority comes responsibility for impact. Divine strategy cultivates integrity. Decisions are evaluated not only for effectiveness, but for righteousness. As you operate within heaven's blueprint, confidence grows. You recognize the coherence of your journey. Seemingly isolated experiences reveal interconnected purpose. Family, today is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, and we are stepping into an ADOIC moment of inner healing. This is not a casual prayer. This is not background noise while you scroll. This is a divine intervention for the places in you that have been silently bleeding, the emotions you learned to manage but never truly healed, and the confusion that has been clouding your discernment. Some of you have been strong for too long. You've held it together while your heart was fractured. You've smiled through pressure, functioned through pain, and kept moving while your soul was crying out for relief. But hear this clearly: God does not just want you productive. He wants you whole. Healing is not weakness. Healing is warfare. Healing is restoration of authority. Today, we are confronting emotional fatigue, soul wounds, trauma stored in memory, and confusion that has hijacked clarity. We are declaring that what hurt you will no longer define you. What broke you will no longer control you, and what overwhelmed you will no longer dominate your decisions. This prayer is designed to rebuild your emotional strength, recalibrate your inner world, and restore clarity to your mind so you can move forward without distortion. As we pray, the Holy Spirit will begin to untangle what has been knotted for years. Peace will replace inner noise. Strength will rise where weariness lived. Clarity will cut through confusion. You are not here by accident. You are here because this prayer is timed for your healing. So don't rush. Don't multitask. Position your heart. Open your spirit. And get ready, because in the next few moments, we are about to release an ADOIC PR that will heal the inside and empower the outside. Inner healing is the restoration of authority over your emotions, not the suppression of them. Because anything you silence without healing will eventually surface with greater force and demand control in ways you did not intend. Many people believe strength means ignoring pain, burying emotions, or spiritualizing wounds so they never have to confront them. But suppression is not dominion. It is delay. Authority means you are no longer ruled by emotional reactions, triggers, or internal chaos, because you understand what is happening within you and you have reclaimed the power to govern it. When emotions are suppressed, they leak into decisions, relationships, tone. posture, and timing. But when emotions are healed, they become servants instead of masters. God never designed emotions to dominate the soul, but He also never intended for them to be denied. Emotions are indicators, not dictators. They reveal where authority has been challenged, where wounds have interrupted alignment, and where unresolved experiences have taken up residence in the inner world. Inner healing is the process by which the Holy Spirit enters those places, not to erase memory, but to remove emotional charge so memory no longer has power. When healing takes place, the same experience that once triggered fear, anger, or insecurity no longer controls your response, because the authority has been restored to your spirit. Many believers are spiritually anointed, but emotionally fragmented. And fragmentation always weakens authority. You cannot rule effectively in the outer world when the inner world is in rebellion. Emotional wounds fracture focus, distort perception, and sabotage discernment. That is why people repeat cycles they prayed to escape, because prayer without healing leaves the root intact. Authority is not loudness, dominance, or intensity. Authority is stability. It is the ability to remain centered, clear, and decisive even when pressure is applied. Inner healing restores that center. When emotions are unhealed, they create false narratives. Fear convinces you that danger is always imminent. Rejection tells you that people are against you. Shame whispers that you are disqualified. Anger convinces you that aggression equals strength. These emotions are not evil, but when they are wounded, they become weapons used against you. Healing dismantles those internal lies and replaces them with truth, clarity, and emotional regulation. Regulation is not numbness, it is mastery. Authority over emotions means you can feel deeply without being driven blindly. You can acknowledge grief without surrendering to despair. You can recognize anger without allowing it to rule your mouth. You can experience disappointment without abandoning purpose. Healing does not remove emotion, it removes emotional tyranny. The healed soul is not emotionless, it is ordered. Many people confuse emotional expression with emotional healing. Crying is not always healing. Talking is not always healing. Venting is not always healing. Healing occurs when the source of the pain is confronted, understood, and released under divine truth. Otherwise, emotions simply recycle themselves. Inner healing restores authority by closing open doors in the soul that were created through trauma, neglect, betrayal, or prolonged stress. These doors allow emotions to enter and exit uncontrollably. Healing restores boundaries. When authority is restored, you no longer apologize for your emotions, and you no longer weaponize them. You take responsibility for them. Responsibility is a sign of rulership. A king does not deny what exists in his territory, but he governs it. Inner healing gives you back the throne of your inner life so emotions no longer overthrow leadership. This is why healing is not optional for those called to lead, build, influence, or advance. Unhealed emotions will always demand compensation. They will look for relief through distraction, control, perfectionism, overworking, withdrawal, or unhealthy attachments. Healing removes the need for compensation because the wound is no longer bleeding. Authority returns when the soul no longer seeks relief in substitutes. This is why some people cannot rest, cannot trust, cannot wait, and cannot receive because their emotions are ruling instead of responding. God heals emotions so you can make decisions from wisdom instead of wounds. Wounded emotions make reactive choices. Healed emotions allow strategic movement. Authority is the ability to pause, assess, and choose rather than explode, retreat, or sabotage progress. Healing gives you emotional intelligence aligned with spiritual discernment. When these two operate together, clarity becomes natural rather than forced. Inner healing also restores authority over time. Emotional wounds slow movement, create hesitation, and produce internal resistance. People delay obedience not because they lack faith, but because emotions are unhealed. Fear negotiates with calling. Insecurity questions assignment. Pain resists vulnerability. Healing removes internal resistance so obedience becomes lighter and movement becomes smoother. The enemy does not need to destroy you if he can destabilize your emotions, because instability erodes authority quietly. Healing is spiritual warfare because it shuts down access points the enemy uses to influence thought patterns and reactions. When emotions are healed, accusations lose power, triggers lose grip, and old voices lose authority. You no longer fight yourself while trying to move forward. Inner healing restores your ability to respond instead of react. Reaction is emotional reflex rooted in past pain. Response is intentional action rooted in present clarity. Authority lives in response. Healing rewires the inner system so your nervous system, thought life, and spirit come back into alignment. Peace is not passivity. Peace is internal order. When authority is restored over emotions, your prayers change, your posture changes, your communication changes, and your presence carries weight. You stop needing to prove strength because strength is internalized. You stop demanding validation because identity is settled. You stop fearing exposure because wholeness has replaced fragmentation. This is why inner healing is foundational, because everything flows from the inner world outward. And when the inner world is healed, authority naturally manifests in decisions, relationships, leadership, and destiny. And the soul finally rests in governance rather than survival, functioning from alignment rather than defense, standing from wholeness rather than endurance, moving forward with clarity, stability, and dominion still expanding within. Emotional strength is built when trauma no longer dictates your reactions. Because as long as past pain is controlling present responses, strength is only an illusion maintained by adrenaline, defense mechanisms, and survival patterns. Many people confuse emotional toughness with emotional strength, but toughness is learned endurance under pressure, while strength is inner stability that remains intact even when pressure increases. Trauma-trained reactions are automatic, subconscious, and protective. But they are not authoritative. They are responses formed in moments where safety, power, or control were threatened. And while they may have once preserved you, they are not designed to govern your future. Trauma speaks first when it is unhealed. It reacts before wisdom can respond. It tightens the chest, accelerates the heart, sharpens the tone, and floods the mind with assumptions rooted in memory rather than reality. This is why certain situations feel larger than they are, why some conversations trigger disproportionate reactions, and why emotional responses sometimes surprise even the person expressing them. Strength begins when the nervous system no longer confuses present moments with past danger. Healing retrains the body, soul, and mind to recognize safety, truth, and timing again. Unhealed trauma programs emotional reflexes. It teaches the soul how to brace, guard, attack, withdraw, or numb itself without conscious thought. These reflexes become habits, and habits become identity if left unchecked. People begin to say, "That's just how I am," when in reality it is how they were trained by pain. Emotional strength is not the absence of feeling, it is the absence of emotional hijacking. When trauma no longer dictates reactions, emotions become information rather than instruction. Many people live in reaction loops, repeating the same emotional responses in different environments, believing the problem is always external. Healing reveals that the real battle is internal regulation. Emotional strength allows you to pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause, authority is restored. Trauma removes the pause. Healing returns it. That pause is where discernment lives, where wisdom operates, where choice becomes possible again. Trauma narrows perception. It convinces the mind that threat is constant and trust is dangerous. Emotional strength expands perception. It allows you to see situations as they are, not as they remind you of something else. When trauma dictates reactions, people overinterpret tone, personalize neutral behavior, anticipate rejection, and prepare defenses unnecessarily. This constant vigilance is exhausting, and exhaustion masquerades as strength until the body and soul begin to collapse under its weight. Healing does not erase memory, but it removes emotional dominance from memory. The event may still be remembered, but it no longer commands physiological and emotional reactions. The body no longer responds as if the danger is happening again. This is where true strength begins, when the past loses its power to control the present. Emotional strength is freedom from emotional time travel. Trauma often teaches people to survive by control. Control of environments, people's schedules, emotions, or outcomes. When control is threatened, reactions intensify, anger spikes. Anxiety rises, withdrawal activates. Healing loosens the grip of control and replaces it with trust, discernment, and flexibility. Strength is not rigidity. Strength is adaptability rooted in safety. When trauma no longer dictates reactions, you no longer need to dominate situations to feel secure. Many spiritual people pray for strength but resist healing, not realizing that healing is the pathway to strength. Trauma distorts spiritual interpretation. It turns caution into fear, boundaries into walls, discernment into suspicion, and passion into defensiveness. Healing clarifies spiritual perceptions so emotions no longer misinterpret spiritual signals. Emotional strength allows faith to operate without interference from fear-based reactions. Unhealed trauma also distorts communication. People react instead of listen. They defend instead of understand. They respond to perceived threats rather than actual words. Healing slows communication down. It allows clarity, curiosity, and compassion to replace emotional reflex. Emotional strength shows up in tone, pacing, posture, and presence. It is quiet confidence rather than loud reactivity. When trauma dictates reactions, people live in emotional anticipation, bracing for what might happen rather than responding to what is happening. This creates anxiety, restlessness, and mental fatigue. Healing brings the nervous system back into the present moment. Emotional strength lives in the now, not in rehearsed outcomes or imagined threats. The present becomes safe again. Trauma-trained reactions often feel justified, especially when they once protected you. Healing challenges that justification without invalidating the pain. It separates the experience from the identity. You are not weak because trauma affected you, but you cannot remain ruled by what once wounded you. Emotional strength emerges when you no longer need to prove you are okay by overreacting, overexplaining, or overperforming. When trauma loses control over reactions, leadership capacity increases, decision-making improves, relationships stabilize, authority becomes consistent. Strength becomes sustainable. You are no longer drained by emotional spikes and crashes. Energy is conserved. Focus sharpens. Peace becomes accessible without effort. Healing teaches the body that it no longer needs to stay in survival mode. Muscles relax. Breath deepens. Thoughts slow. Emotional strength is embodied, not just believed. It lives in how the body responds to stress, how quickly equilibrium is restored after disruption, and how calmly challenges are approached. Trauma reacts to protect. Healing responds to lead. Emotional strength is leadership of the inner world. When trauma no longer dictates reactions, emotions align with truth instead of memory, with wisdom instead of fear, with clarity instead of confusion, and the soul moves from survival into stability, from defense into dominion, from reaction into intentional movement guided by authority that no longer belongs to the past, but is anchored firmly in the present moment, fully aware, fully grounded, fully capable of standing steady without being driven by what once wounded the heart and shaped the reflexes of a soul that is now being retrained for strength rather than survival. Clarity returns when soul wounds are healed at the root, not managed at the surface, because anything addressed superficially will continue to distort perception beneath conscious awareness. Many people attempt to think their way into clarity, analyze their way out of confusion, or pray only for direction without allowing healing to take place in the inner world where distortion was formed. Clarity is not primarily an intellectual issue, it is a soul condition. When the soul is wounded, perception bends, interpretation skews, and judgment becomes compromised even when information is accurate. Unhealed soul wounds act like filters over reality. They color how situations are interpreted, how people are perceived, and how choices are evaluated. A wounded soul does not see clearly because pain refracts truth. Rejection convinces the mind that distance equals abandonment. Betrayal interprets caution as hostility. Shame misreads correction as condemnation. These interpretations feel real, but they are rooted in unresolved pain rather than present truth. Managing symptoms may control behavior temporarily, but healing the root restores perception permanently. Many people function with high levels of spiritual language and activity while carrying deep soul wounds that quietly influence every decision. They fast, pray, declare, and decree, yet remain confused about timing, relationships, and direction. This confusion persists because the wound is still speaking. The voice of pain competes with the voice of wisdom. Healing quiets the internal noise so clarity can emerge without strain. Surface management focuses on behavior modification. Root healing focuses on internal alignment. Behavior can be disciplined, but perception cannot be forced. You cannot command clarity while tolerating unresolved wounds. Clarity flows naturally when internal conflict is resolved. Healing aligns emotions, thoughts, and spirit so they no longer send competing signals. When alignment returns, discernment sharpens. Soul wounds often originate in moments where the inner world felt unsafe, unseen, or unsupported. In those moments, the soul learned how to interpret reality in ways that preserved survival. These interpretations may have been necessary then, but they become liabilities later. Healing revisits those moments not to relive pain, but to reinterpret them through truth. When interpretation changes, clarity follows. Confusion is often misdiagnosed as lack of information. In reality, confusion frequently results from internal fragmentation. One part of the soul wants to move forward while another part is guarding against past harm. This internal contradiction produces hesitation, second guessing, and inconsistency. Healing integrates these fractured parts so the soul can move as one. Clarity is the byproduct of integration. Unhealed wounds also distort spiritual discernment. People attribute emotional discomfort to spiritual warning or mistake fear for wisdom. Healing refines discernment by separating emotional residue from spiritual insight. When wounds are healed, intuition becomes trustworthy again. Decisions are no longer driven by emotional memory, but by present awareness and divine guidance. Managing wounds at the surface often looks like coping strategies, rationalizations, and spiritual bypassing. People stay busy to avoid stillness. They quote scripture to silence discomfort. They intellectualize pain instead of confronting it. These strategies create the illusion of control but do not produce clarity. Healing requires courage to slow down and allow truth to surface where pain has been hidden. Root healing restores the soul's ability to interpret reality accurately. It removes emotional static from the signal. When the static is gone, guidance becomes clearer, timing becomes discernible, and priorities reorder themselves without force. Clarity does not have to be chased, it emerges. Many people are confused about purpose, not because purpose is unclear, but because wounds have clouded identity. When identity is wounded, purpose feels threatening, movement feels risky. Healing stabilizes identity so purpose no longer feels dangerous. Clarity follows stability. Soul wounds also affect how people interpret silence. Silence becomes rejection. Delay becomes denial. Correction becomes attack. Healing redefines these interpretations so silence can be processed as reflection, delay as preparation, and correction as alignment. Clarity is restored when interpretations are healed. When wounds are unhealed, the mind oscillates between extremes, overthinking and avoidance, urgency and paralysis. Healing calms the nervous system, allowing the mind to rest in the present. A regulated nervous system is essential for clarity. Peace is not emotional numbness. It is internal order that allows perception to function properly. Root healing also restores clarity in relationships. People stop projecting past pain onto present connections. Communication improves because assumptions decrease. Listening deepens because defenses soften. Clarity in relationships reduces emotional friction and increases trust. Many people attempt to manage confusion by seeking constant confirmation, advice, and reassurance. Healing reduces dependency on external validation because internal clarity strengthens. Confidence grows not from certainty of outcome, but from trust in perception. When perception is healed, you trust yourself again. Clarity returns gradually as healing deepens. It is not always dramatic, but it is consistent. Decisions feel lighter. Direction feels steadier. The need to force answers diminishes. Healing creates space for wisdom to operate without resistance. When the soul is healed at the root, clarity becomes the natural state rather than a rare experience. Thoughts align. Emotions settle. Spirit leads. The noise quiets. The fog lifts. Direction emerges. Movement becomes intentional rather than reactive. Choices reflect truth rather than fear. The soul no longer argues with itself. Inner conflict resolves into inner agreement. Clarity becomes the atmosphere of the inner world, sustained not by effort, but by wholeness that now governs perception, interpretation, discernment, and response from a place of healed awareness that no longer confuses pain with truth or memory with present reality, but stands steady in alignment where the inner world is no longer divided but unified, clear, and responsive to guidance without distortion. God heals the inner world so the outer life can function without distortion, because whatever remains broken internally will eventually express itself externally, no matter how disciplined, spiritual, or successful a person appears to be. The inner world is the command center of behavior, decision-making, relationships, and perception. When the inner world is fractured, the outer life becomes inconsistent, unpredictable, and exhausting to maintain. Healing is not cosmetic improvement, it is structural restoration that allows life to flow without constant correction or damage control. Many people invest heavily in managing external outcomes while neglecting internal alignment. They adjust habits, routines, environments, and appearances, yet remain internally unstable. This instability leaks into communication, leadership, timing, and judgment. God heals internally first because external transformation without internal healing produces strain. You can build structures externally, but if the foundation is cracked, everything above it requires constant repair. The inner world shapes how reality is experienced. Thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and memories interact continuously to interpret events. When these elements are wounded or misaligned, interpretation becomes distorted. People react to perceived threats that do not exist, misread intentions, and overcorrect situations unnecessarily. Healing recalibrates the inner world so interpretation aligns with truth rather than fear history. or insecurity. Distortion often shows up as inconsistency. A person may be confident one moment and insecure the next, decisive today and hesitant tomorrow, open in one relationship and guarded in another. This is not always hypocrisy. It is fragmentation. Healing integrates the inner world so responses become consistent across environments. Consistency is a sign of internal wholeness. God does not heal the inner world to make people comfortable. He heals it to make them effective. Effectiveness requires clarity, emotional regulation, discernment, and stability. These qualities cannot be sustained by willpower alone. They flow naturally from a healed inner world. When healing takes place, effort decreases and flow increases. Many external struggles are symptoms, not causes. Relationship conflict, burnout, indecision, overreaction, and procrastination often originate from unhealed internal wounds. Addressing symptoms without healing the source produces temporary relief, but not lasting change. God targets the root because he is interested in transformation, not maintenance. The inner world also determines capacity. Unhealed pain consumes emotional energy. It occupies mental space. It drains focus. When healing occurs, that energy is released and redirected toward creativity, productivity, and purpose. The outer life expands when the inner world is no longer congested by unresolved issues. Distortion in the outer life often manifests as misalignment between intention and outcome. People want peace but create conflict. They desire connection but push others away. They pursue purpose but sabotage momentum. Healing closes the gap between intention and outcome by aligning the inner world with conscious desire. God heals internally so that choices are made from wisdom rather than wounds. Wounded choices are reactive, defensive, and short-sighted. Healed choices are intentional, strategic, and grounded. The outer life reflects the quality of internal decision-making. Healing upgrades that quality. The inner world also governs boundaries. Unhealed individuals often struggle with boundaries, either erecting walls or allowing overexposure. Healing clarifies where boundaries are needed and where openness is safe. This clarity improves relationships and reduces conflict in the outer life. Spiritual authority is also rooted in the inner world. A person cannot operate in consistent authority externally while internally fragmented. Authority flows from alignment. Healing restores alignment, which strengthens authority without effort. Presence carries weight when the inner world is settled. Distortion also affects timing. Unhealed impatience pushes prematurely. Unhealed fear delays unnecessarily. Healing restores sensitivity to timing. The outer life becomes more synchronized with purpose because internal pressure no longer dictates movement. Many people attempt to change their outer life through discipline alone. Discipline is valuable, but it cannot replace healing. Discipline manages behavior. Healing transforms motivation. When motivation is healed, behavior follows naturally. The outer life stabilizes because it is no longer being forced. God heals the inner world so that success does not amplify brokenness. Without healing, success magnifies insecurity, pride, fear, or emptiness. With healing, success becomes a platform for service rather than a stage for compensation. The outer life can expand safely when the inner world is stable. Healing also restores enjoyment. Many people function efficiently but joylessly. They achieve goals but feel empty. Healing reconnects the inner world to pleasure, gratitude, and presence. The outer life becomes something to experience, not just manage. Distortion often causes people to live in extremes, overworking then collapsing, overgiving then withdrawing, trusting blindly then shutting down. Healing brings balance. Balance is evidence of internal regulation. The outer life becomes sustainable rather than cyclical. God heals the inner world because he is interested in wholeness, not performance. Performance can impress others, but wholeness sustains the individual. When the inner world is healed, the outer life no longer requires constant explanation, justification, or repair. Life flows with less friction. The healed inner world produces clarity, consistency, and calm that naturally shapes the external environment. People respond differently. Opportunities align more easily. Decisions feel lighter. The outer life becomes an expression of internal truth rather than a cover for internal conflict. Healing simplifies life by removing internal opposition. When the inner world is healed, the outer life no longer carries the burden of unresolved pain. Relationships become clearer. Work becomes more focused. Rest becomes possible. Movement becomes intentional. Authority becomes natural. The outer life reflects the order of the inner world, functioning without distortion, without constant resistance, without internal sabotage, moving in alignment with purpose, clarity, and stability that originate from a soul restored to wholeness, where internal harmony now governs external expression, and life no longer has to compensate for what was once broken but now stands whole, aligned, and functioning from a healed core that quietly but powerfully shapes every outward experience. What was stored in memory but never healed must be confronted and released, because memory without healing becomes a silent authority that governs reactions, beliefs, and expectations long after the event has passed. Memory is not just a record of what happened, it is a container for emotional charge, interpretation, and meaning. When experiences are stored without resolution, they do not remain neutral. They influence perception, decision-making, and behavior from the subconscious, shaping life in ways that are often unrecognized but deeply felt. Unhealed memories are not passive. They speak through triggers, emotional responses, bodily sensations, and thought patterns. A tone of voice, a facial expression, a delay, or a familiar circumstance can activate an old memory and produce a reaction that feels immediate but is rooted in the past. The present moment becomes hijacked by stored emotion. Confronting memory is not about reliving pain. It is about removing its authority over the present. Many people avoid confronting memory because they equate remembrance with weakness or regression. They fear that revisiting pain will undo progress. In reality, unexamined memory continues to operate unchecked, while confronted memory loses power. Healing does not require reliving the experience emotionally. It requires acknowledging its impact honestly and allowing truth to reinterpret it. Stored memory often carries conclusions that were formed in moments of vulnerability. Conclusions such as, I am not safe, I am not valued, I must stay guarded, or I must control outcomes to survive. These conclusions may have protected the individual at the time, but they become limitations later. Healing confronts these conclusions and replaces them with truth. When the conclusion changes, the memory loses its grip. Memory that is not healed becomes the lens through which new experiences are filtered. People respond not to what is happening, but to what it reminds them of. This creates repetitive patterns, attracting similar dynamics, conflicts, and disappointments. Healing breaks these cycles by releasing the emotional residue stored in memory. Confronting memory requires courage and honesty. It involves acknowledging pain without minimizing it and recognizing its influence without allowing it to define identity. Many people spiritualize avoidance, convincing themselves that faith means never looking back. True healing allows the past to be addressed without being lived in. Release does not come from denial, it comes from resolution. The body often remembers what the mind tries to forget. Unhealed memory manifests physically through tension, fatigue, chronic stress, and emotional sensitivity. Healing integrates mind and body by allowing stored emotional energy to be released. When memory is healed, the body relaxes and returns to regulation. Memory also influences trust. Betrayal stored in memory produces suspicion. Abandonment stored in memory produces anxiety. Rejection stored in memory produces withdrawal. Healing releases these emotional imprints so trust can be rebuilt based on present reality rather than past injury. Releasing memory does not mean forgetting the lesson. It means the lesson no longer carries pain. Wisdom remains, but emotional charge is gone. This distinction is critical. Healing preserves discernment while removing fear. Memory becomes a reference point, not a trigger. Many people attempt to outrun memory through activity, success, or distraction. These strategies may provide temporary relief, but memory remains intact until confronted. Healing requires stillness, reflection, and willingness to face what was buried. Release happens when the truth is allowed to surface without judgment. Unhealed memory also distorts identity. People begin to see themselves through the lens of what happened to them rather than who they are. Healing restores identity by separating experience from essence. You are not the trauma, the loss, the failure, or the betrayal. Memory may record the event, but it does not define the person. Confronting memory often reveals grief that was never processed. Grief over what was lost, what never happened, or what was taken. Healing allows grief to move rather than stagnate. Stagnant grief hardens into bitterness or numbness. Released grief restores emotional flow. Memory stored without healing also affects self-talk. Internal dialogue becomes shaped by past criticism, neglect, or humiliation. Healing interrupts these internal narratives and replaces them with truth. When memory is healed, the inner voice changes. Release is an act of authority. It is the decision to no longer allow the past to occupy present territory. This does not excuse harm or rewrite history. It simply removes emotional ownership from the event. Authority is reclaimed when memory no longer dictates emotional response. Healing memory also restores clarity. Confusion often arises when old memories interfere with present perception. Releasing memory clears mental space and sharpens discernment. Decisions become cleaner because they are not influenced by unresolved emotion. Many people resist release because they fear losing the story. The story becomes part of identity. Healing does not erase the story, it redeems it. The story becomes testimony rather than trauma. Power shifts from the event to the individual. Confrontation of memory is not a one-time act, but a process. Layers surface gradually. Each release restores additional freedom. Emotional capacity increases. Peace deepens. Presence strengthens. When memory is healed and released, emotional reactions soften. Triggers lose intensity. The past becomes quieter. The present becomes fuller. Energy previously bound to memory becomes available for growth, creativity, and connection. What was stored without healing must be confronted, not to reopen wounds, but to close them properly. Release does not diminish strength, it proves it. When memory no longer carries pain, it loses authority. The present regains sovereignty. The future opens without restriction. Life is no longer negotiated with the past, but lived from freedom, where memory is acknowledged, healed, and released, no longer governing thought, emotion, or expectation, but resting in its proper place as history rather than a ruler, allowing the soul to move forward unburdened, regulated, and restored to clarity and strength without the weight of unresolved experience, still exerting silent control over reactions and choices that now belong fully to the present moment. Wholeness is a spiritual weapon that repositions you for dominion and forward movement, because fragmentation weakens authority while integration strengthens it. The enemy does not always attack destiny directly. Often the strategy is to divide the inner world so focus, confidence, and clarity are diluted. A fragmented soul expends energy managing internal conflict, leaving little strength for advancement. Wholeness gathers scattered parts back into alignment, restoring power that was lost through division. Many people attempt to move forward while internally split, one part desiring progress and another part resisting because of fear, pain, or past failure. This internal opposition creates stagnation. Wholeness removes resistance by bringing agreement within the soul. When the inner world agrees, movement becomes effortless. Dominion begins internally before it manifests externally. Spiritual authority is amplified through wholeness. Authority requires coherence. When thoughts, emotions, will, and spirit are aligned, commands carry weight. Fragmentation weakens follow-through and consistency. Healing integrates these dimensions so authority flows without interruption. Wholeness is not perfection, it is alignment. It is the condition where nothing inside you is working against what you are called to do. Many people pray for breakthroughs while ignoring fragmentation. They ask for acceleration while carrying unresolved inner conflict. Acceleration without wholeness creates instability. God restores wholeness first so advancement does not collapse under its own weight. Dominion is sustained by internal order, not external momentum. Wholeness stabilizes identity. A fragmented identity shifts based on environment, approval, or pressure. Wholeness anchors identity internally so external circumstances no longer dictate self-perception. When identity is stable, authority is consistent. Consistency is a hallmark of dominion. Fragmentation also disrupts focus. Attention is divided between managing emotions, suppressing pain, and navigating purpose. Wholeness consolidates focus. Energy is no longer scattered. Forward movement accelerates because power is no longer leaking through unresolved internal fractures. Wholeness is a weapon because it disarms internal sabotage. Many delays are self-generated, not consciously, but through internal misalignment. Healing removes these obstacles. When self-sabotage loses power, progress becomes natural. The enemy exploits fragmentation by triggering unhealed parts at critical moments. Wholeness closes access points. Triggers lose influence. Emotional reactions soften. Decisions become intentional. Dominion increases as reactions decrease. Wholeness restores confidence without arrogance. Fragmentation creates insecurity masked as control or overcompensation. Wholeness produces quiet confidence grounded in self-awareness and truth. This confidence attracts opportunity and repels intimidation. Forward movement requires trust in self and timing. Fragmentation erodes trust. Wholeness rebuilds it. When you trust your discernment, movement becomes decisive. Hesitation fades. Momentum builds. Wholeness also restores authority over time. Fragmented individuals are often trapped in cycles, revisiting the same issues repeatedly. Wholeness breaks cycles by resolving their source. Forward movement becomes linear rather than circular. Many people attempt to dominate externally while lacking internal dominion. External authority without internal wholeness is exhausting. Healing restores internal governance so external leadership becomes sustainable. Wholeness strengthens spiritual perception. Fragmentation creates noise that interferes with discernment. Healing quiets the noise. Guidance becomes clear. Direction sharpens. Movement aligns with purpose rather than pressure. Wholeness also enhances resilience. Fragmented individuals fracture further under stress. Wholeness absorbs pressure without breaking. This resilience supports long-term advancement. Forward movement often requires letting go. Fragmentation clings to what feels familiar even when it is limiting. Wholeness releases attachments rooted in fear. Freedom increases. Expansion follows. Wholeness aligns intention with action. Fragmentation creates contradictions between what is desired and what is done. Healing resolves these contradictions. Action flows naturally from intention. Dominion is exercised through presence. Fragmentation weakens presence. Wholeness strengthens it. When presence is strong, influence increases without effort. Wholeness also restores emotional regulation. Unregulated emotions derail progress. Healing brings balance. Balance supports sustained movement. Many people underestimate the power of wholeness, viewing it as passive or internal. In reality, wholeness is strategic. It positions you ahead of opposition. It removes leverage from the enemy. Wholeness simplifies life. Fragmentation complicates it. Simplicity accelerates movement. Complexity delays it. Wholeness restores alignment between calling and capacity. Fragmentation limits capacity. Healing expands it. Forward movement becomes scalable. Wholeness is not an endpoint. It is a posture. It allows continuous growth without internal collapse. Dominion increases as wholeness deepens. When the inner world is whole, decisions are clearer. Reactions are calmer, authority is steadier, and movement is intentional. Life advances without internal resistance. Progress no longer feels forced. Expansion feels natural. The soul moves as one. Power consolidates. Direction sharpens. Authority stabilizes. Forward movement accelerates because nothing inside is pulling backward. Nothing is divided. Nothing is resisting alignment. And wholeness becomes the silent force that repositions you ahead of opposition, above distraction, and into sustained dominion where advancement is no longer interrupted by internal fracture, but propelled by integration, clarity, and authority that continue to strengthen as the soul remains unified, grounded, and fully aligned with purpose, moving steadily forward without fragmentation, slowing momentum, or compromising strength.